The morning sun cast long shadows across the courtyard of Kensington Palace as William stood by the tall windows of his study. His hands trembled slightly as he held the official letter that had arrived just hours before. The words seemed to blur together, but their meaning was crystal clear. Kate had been diagnosed with a rare condition that would require her to step back from all royal duties indefinitely. He could hear the soft footsteps approaching down the marble hallway. Kate appeared in the doorway, her usual radiant smile replaced by a look of quiet determination. She had always been the strongest person he knew, but today there was something different in her eyes, a mixture of sadness and acceptance that made his heart ache. "The children don't know yet," she said softly, moving to stand beside him at the window. "I want to tell them together when we're ready." Her voice carried the same grace that had made her beloved by millions around the world, but William could detect the slight quiver that betrayed her true emotions. The palace staff had been buzzing with whispered conversations all morning. Word traveled fast within these ancient walls, and though the official announcement wouldn't come for hours, everyone seemed to sense that something significant was happening. William noticed how the housekeepers moved more quietly than usual, how the security guards exchanged meaningful glances, and how even the gardeners outside worked with unusual solemnity. Kate walked over to her desk and began organizing papers with methodical precision. These were the documents for her upcoming charitable visits, speech notes for events she would no longer attend, and correspondence with organizations that had become like family to her. Each paper represented dreams and commitments that would now have to be transferred to others. "I've been thinking about the children's hospital visit next week," she said, not looking up from her work. "Sarah can handle it beautifully. She knows all the families we've been working with." Her practical approach to the situation amazed William. Even in this moment of personal crisis, she was thinking about others, ensuring that her absence wouldn't disappoint those who were counting on her. The afternoon brought a steady stream of visitors. Palace officials, medical advisors, and close family members all needed to be informed and consulted. Kate handled each meeting with the same poise she had shown during state dinners and international tours. She answered questions clearly, discussed logistics calmly, and showed genuine concern for how her situation would affect others. William watched her throughout the day, marveling at her strength. He remembered their wedding day, when she had walked down the aisle of Westminster Abbey with such confidence and grace. That same spirit was evident now, even as she faced one of the most challenging moments of her life. The woman who had captured his heart all those years ago at university was still there, unchanged by titles or circumstances. As evening approached, the palace grew quieter. The last meeting had ended, the final calls had been made, and tomorrow's schedule had been cleared. Kate stood in the garden, looking out at the rose bushes she had personally selected and nurtured over the years. The blooms were at their peak, creating a tapestry of colors that seemed almost too beautiful for such a difficult day. William joined her among the roses, and for the first time since morning they were truly alone. No staff, no advisors, no protocols, just a husband and wife facing an uncertain future together. The setting sun painted everything in golden light, and in that moment, despite everything they were facing, there was peace. The next morning arrived with unusual stillness. Kate woke before dawn, as had become her habit over the past few weeks. The doctors had explained that rest was crucial, but her mind refused to cooperate with sleep. She moved quietly through their private quarters, not wanting to wake William, who had finally fallen into a peaceful sleep after hours of restless turning. In the kitchen, she prepared tea with the same careful attention she brought to everything else. The familiar ritual of measuring leaves and timing the steeping brought comfort. Through the window, she could see the early morning joggers in Hyde Park, their lives continuing in blissful normalcy, while hers was about to change forever. The sound of small feet running down the hallway announced the arrival of their youngest child. "Mommy, are you making pancakes?" came the innocent question that nearly brought tears to Kate's eyes. How do you explain to a child that everything they know is about to shift? How do you maintain their sense of security while your own world feels uncertain? William appeared in the doorway, hair still messy from sleep, but his eyes alert and caring. Without words, he took over breakfast preparations, allowing Kate to simply sit and savor these precious moments of ordinary family life. The children chattered about their plans for the day, completely unaware that this breakfast would mark the end of one chapter of their lives and the beginning of another. After the children left for school, Kate found herself in the portrait gallery, walking slowly past paintings of previous generations of royals. Each face told a story of duty, sacrifice, and service. She paused before a particular portrait of Queen Elizabeth, remembering the wise words the late monarch had shared during their private conversations about the weight of responsibility and the importance of knowing when to step back for the greater good. The morning's schedule included a final meeting with her private secretary, who had become much more than a staff member over the years. They discussed the transition of Kate's patronages, the reassignment of her projects, and the careful wording of statements that would need to be released. Every detail required consideration, not just for accuracy, but for the impact on the many people and organizations that depended on her support. "Your Royal Highness," her secretary said carefully, "the Children's Literacy Program has asked if you might record a message for their annual fundraiser. They understand the circumstances, but..." The request hung in the air, representing countless similar situations where Kate's absence would be deeply felt. Kate considered the request thoughtfully. "Schedule it for this afternoon," she decided. "If I'm stepping back, I want to leave as many positive contributions as possible." This decision reflected her character perfectly. Even in retreat, she was thinking about how to continue serving others. The remainder of the morning was spent in the palace's private chapel, a small, peaceful space where Kate often went to think and pray. The sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows created patterns of color on the stone floor, and the silence was broken only by the distant sounds of London life beyond the palace walls. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, from a middle-class family in Berkshire to the heart of the British monarchy. It had been a path filled with challenges and privileges in equal measure. Now, facing this new challenge, she felt the same determination that had carried her through years of public scrutiny and royal responsibility. William found her there as noon approached. He sat beside her in comfortable silence, understanding that words weren't necessary. They had learned to communicate in these quiet moments, sharing strength and support without the need for conversation. The bond that had sustained them through years of public life would now need to carry them through this private struggle. Outside, the world continued its relentless pace, unaware that within these ancient walls, two people were gathering courage for one of the most difficult conversations of their marriage. The afternoon brought an unexpected visitor. William's brother Harry had flown in from California, having heard the news through private family channels. His arrival created a stir among the security team, but for Kate, it was exactly what she needed, a reminder that family bonds transcend all protocols and disagreements. Harry's embrace was warm and genuine, filled with the kind of brotherly affection that had defined their relationship before circumstances had pulled the family in different directions. "I'm here for whatever you need," he said simply, and Kate knew he meant it completely. The presence of someone who understood the unique pressures of royal life brought unexpected comfort. The three of them sat in the private sitting room, sharing tea and memories. Harry told stories about his children, painting pictures of a life lived away from the constant scrutiny that had defined their younger years. Kate listened carefully, seeing possibilities for her own future that she hadn't considered before. Perhaps stepping back from public duties didn't mean stepping away from meaningful work entirely. "Do you remember," Harry said with a gentle smile, "that time when you first joined the family, and grandmother gave you that advice about finding your own way to serve?" Kate nodded, remembering the Queen's words about how duty could take many forms, and that sometimes the most important service happened away from cameras and crowds. As evening approached, the children returned from school, and the conversation shifted to lighter topics. Kate watched her brother-in-law interact with his nieces and nephews, noting how naturally he fell back into the role of beloved uncle, despite the distance that had grown between him and the institution. It reminded her that relationships could survive and even thrive outside the formal structures of royal life. Later, when Harry had left for his hotel, Kate and William finally sat down with their children. The conversation was gentle but honest, age-appropriate but truthful. The children asked practical questions. Would they still live in the same house? Would Mommy still help with homework? Would there still be family vacations? Each question was answered with patience and reassurance. Their oldest child, wise beyond their years, asked the most difficult question, "Is Mummy sick?" The directness of the inquiry required an equally direct response. Kate explained about doctors and treatments, about the need for rest and quiet time, and about how sometimes taking care of yourself is the best way to take care of others. The evening routine continued as normally as possible. Baths were drawn, stories were read, and goodnight kisses were distributed with extra tenderness. As Kate tucked each child into bed, she made promises about being present for the important moments, about maintaining their sense of security, and about how much they were loved. After the children were asleep, Kate retreated to her private study to work on her farewell address. The words needed to be perfect, grateful but not sentimental, honest but not alarming, hopeful but not dismissive of the challenges ahead. Each sentence was crafted with care, knowing that millions of people around the world would analyze every word for deeper meaning. William read over her shoulder as she wrote, occasionally suggesting a different phrase or questioning whether a particular section struck the right tone. Their collaboration on this crucial communication reminded Kate of their early years together, when they had learned to navigate the complexities of public life as a team. "I keep thinking about all the people I'm letting down," Kate confided as she set down her pen. The charities, the patronages, the families who were counting on visits and support. Her voice carried the weight of responsibility that had become second nature over the years. William took her hands in his, feeling the slight tremor that had become more noticeable recently. "You're not letting anyone down," he said firmly. "You're showing them that it's okay to prioritize health, that it's possible to step back with dignity, and that true service sometimes means knowing when to rest." The palace around them settled into nighttime quiet, but Kate's mind remained active, processing the magnitude of the changes ahead. Tomorrow would bring the official announcement, followed by a period of transition that would reshape not just her own life, but the lives of everyone connected to her work and her family. The morning of the announcement dawned gray and drizzly, as if London itself was reflecting the somber mood within the palace walls. Kate dressed carefully in a navy blue dress that had always been one of her favorites, elegant but approachable, formal but warm. Every choice today would be scrutinized, so she selected pieces that conveyed stability and dignity. The media had been gathering outside the palace since before sunrise, their presence growing larger as the morning progressed. Camera crews set up their equipment while reporters practiced their lines, all sensing that something significant was about to be revealed. The palace's communication team had worked through the night to coordinate the global release of information. Inside, Kate's final official meeting was with representatives from her major patronages. These were the organizations closest to her heart: the Children's Hospital Foundation, the Mental Health Initiative, the arts education program she had personally developed. Each representative brought flowers and handwritten notes from the people whose lives Kate had touched through her work. The meeting was emotional but professional. Kate listened as each organization presented plans for continuing their work in her absence, and she offered suggestions and contacts that might help them maintain momentum. Her detailed knowledge of every program amazed even those who had worked closely with her for years. She had never been a figurehead. She had been a true partner in every initiative. "Your Royal Highness," said the director of the Children's Hospital Foundation, "the families wanted you to know that your visits didn't just bring publicity to our cause. You brought hope. You remembered names, followed up on treatments, and made every child feel special. That legacy will continue regardless of your official status." After the meeting, Kate spent time in her office personally signing thank you notes to staff members who had supported her work over the years. From her personal assistant to the drivers who had transported her to countless engagements, each person received a handwritten message acknowledging their contribution to her ability to serve effectively. The lunch hour brought a special visit from her parents, who had driven up from their home in Berkshire. Their presence provided the emotional support Kate needed before facing the afternoon's challenges. Her mother's practical advice and her father's quiet strength reminded her of the values that had shaped her long before she became a member of the royal family. "You raised me to know that health comes first," Kate told her parents over a quiet lunch in the private dining room. "You taught me that taking care of myself isn't selfish. It's necessary." Her parents exchanged knowing looks, remembering the determined young woman who had first caught the attention of a future king at university. The afternoon filming session took place in the same room where Kate had recorded countless Christmas messages and official statements over the years. The familiar setting provided comfort, but the content of today's message was unlike anything she had previously shared with the public. The cameras rolled multiple times until everyone was satisfied with the perfect balance of emotion and composure. In her address, Kate spoke directly to the people who had supported her work, expressing gratitude for their partnership and explaining her decision with characteristic honesty. She avoided medical details while acknowledging the reality of her situation, and she emphasized her commitment to recovery and eventual return to service in whatever form that might take. The most challenging part was addressing the children and young people who had found inspiration in her advocacy work. Kate wanted them to understand that stepping back didn't mean giving up, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit when you need help. Her words were chosen carefully to promote mental health awareness while maintaining hope for the future. After the filming concluded, Kate found herself emotionally exhausted but relieved. The hardest part was over. The decision had been made, the words had been spoken, and now the healing could begin. William waited for her outside the filming room, offering a supportive embrace that spoke volumes about their partnership. As evening approached, the couple took a quiet walk through the palace gardens, avoiding the areas visible to the media gathered outside. The roses Kate had tended so carefully were reaching the end of their bloom, but new buds were already forming, a natural reminder that endings often lead to new beginnings. The day of Kate's final public appearance arrived with unexpected sunshine, as if nature itself wanted to provide a beautiful backdrop for this poignant moment. The event was a garden party for the children's charities she had supported throughout her royal career, a fitting farewell that would allow her to see many of the young faces that had brought such joy to her work over the years. Kate chose to wear a flowing yellow dress, bright and cheerful, wanting the children to remember her smiling and radiant rather than sad or serious. The color had always been her favorite for children's events because it seemed to make the young ones gravitate toward her naturally. Today, that magnetic quality was more evident than ever as dozens of children surrounded her within minutes of her arrival. The garden party was held in the private grounds of Kensington Palace, transformed for the afternoon into a wonderland of activities and games. Face painters, balloon artists, and gentle ponies created an atmosphere of pure joy that temporarily masked the underlying sadness of the occasion. Kate moved through the crowd with practiced ease, but today there was something different in her interactions, a deeper intensity, as if she was trying to memorize every smile and every giggle. One little girl, no more than 6 years old, approached Kate with a handmade crown fashioned from construction paper and glitter. "I made this for you, Princess Kate," she said with the serious expression that only children can manage when presenting something important. Kate knelt down to the child's level, allowing the paper crown to be placed carefully on her head, and wore it proudly for the remainder of the event. The children seemed to sense that this gathering was special, though none of them fully understood why. They clustered around Kate more closely than usual, reaching for her hands, tugging gently on her dress, and sharing their drawings and stories with unusual urgency. Kate gave each child her complete attention, asking questions about their artwork and listening carefully to their excited chatter about school and families. A group of older children, teenagers who had been part of Kate's youth mentorship program, presented her with a leather-bound book filled with letters and photographs from all the young people she had worked with over the years. The dedication read simply, "To someone who taught us that kindness is a superpower." Kate's composure wavered for just a moment as she accepted the gift, understanding the hours of work that had gone into creating such a treasure. As the afternoon progressed, Kate found herself in conversation with the parents and caregivers who had witnessed her impact on their children's lives. Story after story emerged of how her visits to hospitals had brightened difficult days, how her mentorship programs had given teenagers new confidence, and how her advocacy had brought attention to causes that desperately needed support. "My daughter still talks about the day you visited her in the hospital," shared one mother, her voice thick with emotion. "She was so scared about her surgery, but after spending time with you, she felt brave enough to face anything." "You have a gift for making people feel seen and valued." William arrived as the party was winding down, and together they moved through the remaining guests, thanking volunteers and saying personal goodbyes to the charity workers who had become like family over the years. Each farewell was heartfelt and genuine, filled with promises to stay in touch and hopes for future collaborations in whatever form they might take. The final moments of the party were perhaps the most touching. Kate gathered all the children in a large circle and led them in singing a song they had learned together during previous visits. Their young voices rose in harmony, creating a moment of pure beauty that seemed to suspend time itself. Camera crews, who had been respectfully distant throughout the event, captured this scene from afar, understanding instinctively that they were witnessing something deeply meaningful. As the children began to leave with their families, each one stopped to give Kate a hug goodbye. Some lingered longer than others, sensing perhaps that this farewell was different from previous ones. Kate knelt to meet each child at their level, whispering personal messages of encouragement and love that would stay with them long after this day ended. The garden party concluded as the sun began to set, painting the palace grounds in golden light. Kate stood among the scattered decorations and empty tables, surrounded by the memories of laughter and joy that had filled the afternoon. Tomorrow would bring the quiet of retirement from public duties, but today had been a perfect reminder of why her years of service had been so meaningful and necessary. The sun was setting over Kensington Palace as the last guests departed from the garden party, leaving behind only the immediate family and closest staff members. Kate stood in the doorway of the main residence, still wearing the paper crown the little girl had given her, watching as the garden was slowly restored to its usual pristine condition. William approached her from behind, placing his hands gently on her shoulders. For a moment they simply stood together in comfortable silence, both processing the emotional weight of the day and the finality of what had just occurred. The garden party had been more than a farewell. It had been a celebration of years of meaningful work and genuine connections that would endure long after official duties ended. "Are you ready?" William asked softly, knowing that the most difficult moment was still ahead. Kate nodded, taking a deep breath as they walked together toward the private study where a small group of their closest friends and family members had gathered. This would be her personal goodbye, away from cameras and public scrutiny, where she could be completely honest about her feelings and fears. The study was warmly lit by table lamps and filled with the people who had supported Kate throughout her royal journey. Her parents sat on the familiar sofa, where they had shared countless family conversations over the years. William's father Charles was there, along with his wife Camilla, both offering the kind of understanding that comes from their own experiences with duty and sacrifice. Even Harry had remained for this private moment, understanding its significance despite the geographical and emotional distance that had grown between them. Kate moved around the room, embracing each person individually and sharing personal words of gratitude. To her parents, she expressed appreciation for the values and strength they had instilled in her from childhood. To Charles and Camilla, she acknowledged their guidance and patience as she had learned to navigate the complexities of royal life. To the staff members who had been invited to this intimate gathering, she offered heartfelt thanks for their loyalty and discretion over the years. When she reached Harry, their embrace lasted longer than the others. Years of shared experiences, both joyful and challenging, passed between them in that moment. "Take care of yourself first," he whispered, words that carried the weight of his own struggles with finding balance between public duty and personal well-being. "Everything else will follow." As the evening progressed, stories were shared and memories were celebrated. The conversation was warm and natural, filled with laughter that came from genuine affection rather than forced cheerfulness. Kate found herself relaxing for the first time in weeks, surrounded by people who loved her for who she was, rather than what she represented to the world. The children appeared in their pajamas, having been allowed to stay up past their usual bedtime for this special family gathering. They climbed onto various laps and settled into the conversation, with the easy comfort of children who feel completely secure in their environment. Their presence added a lightness to the evening that reminded everyone of what truly mattered most. As the gathering began to wind down, Kate stood to address the group one final time. Her words were simple but profound, expressing gratitude for the support she had received and hope for the healing journey ahead. She spoke about the privilege of service and the importance of knowing when to step back for the greater good. "I'm not disappearing. she said with a gentle smile. "I'm just changing the way I serve. Sometimes the most important work happens quietly, away from the spotlight, in the everyday moments of loving and caring for the people closest to us." The evening concluded with William and Kate alone on the palace balcony, looking out over the city lights of London. The same view that had witnessed their engagement photos, their wedding preparations, and countless quiet moments throughout their marriage now served as the backdrop for this new chapter in their lives. Kate removed the paper crown and held it carefully in her hands, a tangible reminder of the day's events and the innocence of the children who had given her such joy over the years. Tomorrow would bring new routines, different priorities, and the challenging work of healing. But tonight, surrounded by love and supported by family, she felt ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. The touching embrace that would be remembered by all who witnessed it came naturally as William drew her close, both of them understanding that their love had been tested and proven strong enough to weather any storm. In that moment, with the city stretching out below them and the future unknown but hopeful, they found peace in the knowledge that some things transcend duty, status, and circumstance, and that the most important work of their lives was just beginning.